Tonight on Bridge City News, the fall session of the legislature begins tomorrow with a discussion on a bill that has a huge impact on Alberta farmers. Lethbridge City Council gave the green light to a new city housing strategy. We will explain what that means for you. And we chat with the Lethbridge candidate of the PPC, Grant Hepworth, who says his party has a solid plan for fighting climate change.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Robbins.
Good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. Alberta will be introducing 17 bills once the fall sitting begins at the legislature tomorrow. Government House Leader Jason Nixon says one of them would create new rules for farm safety and another will be on reducing large-scale greenhouse gas emissions. The sitting will be dominated by the release of the provincial budget on October the 24th. Premier Jason Kenney said there will be restraint by his government as it works to end a run of multi-billion-dollar budget deficits within the next 4 years. Lethbridge City Council gave the green light on a new affordable housing strategy. The city social development manager, Martin Thompson, proposed 51 recommended actions. The proposal was based on 4 questions. Who is in need? What are those needs? How can we prioritize? And how can they be aligned with provincial and national housing strategies? Thompson says the biggest barrier the city will face is people who do not want supportive housing in their backyards.
One of the key action items is creating an education and awareness plan, right? To educate the community, to educate housing folks, to neighborhoods, so that they know what, the different levels of supportive housing is. And typically, the number one way to change people's attitude towards something is education. They need to understand. We need to be transparent. We need to work with them so that they know and understand what we're proposing. And then how do we mitigate together? How do we mitigate the problems?
Thompson says the city will soon see partnerships and advocacy started in order to begin its first steps to housing those who need it the most. Building Industry and Land Development Lethbridge wants to take part in the city's recycling program. By having stations of their own, builders want to be able to separate construction waste such as drywall, cardboard, and wood from curbside recycling. The group says this will be cost-effective and a way for Lethbridge to be even more eco-friendly.
This was the best in all fronts. It's more cost-effective, the environmental outcome is better, and it makes the neighborhoods look even better. Yeah. I'm anticipating it being a great success, and I wouldn't be surprised to see like-minded programs along other associations across the province. An effort of the association and all of its members to come together to find a solution to dealing with the amount of construction and demolition waste that we have and being able to capture the recyclable components so it's not going into our landfill.
The city has agreed to allow Bill's extension on materials and recovery until March of next year to avoid surcharges in October. City officials just came back from a meeting with the Alberta Urban Municipalities Association. Now, they brought forth a resolution to make organ and tissue donation an opting out decision and not an opting in decision. The proposal was denied, and Mayor Chris Spearman says he was disappointed.
We felt it firsthand in the city of Lethbridge with Logan Boulay and the Boulay family, and we thought Logan set a tremendous example. He inspired us to bring forward a resolution like that so that others could do what Logan did. And so it should be by default rather than, we're all very, very fortunate that those of us that are healthy, that we have healthy organs, and I would encourage people to be to really think twice. 15% who have signed organ donation cards. It would be great if everybody would sign their cards until we have a legislation that makes organs more accessible to Albertans.
The City of Lethbridge introduced 6 motions and was approved for half of them, including one to develop a provincial drug strategy which recognizes local needs. That resolution passed with about 80% support. This is Fire Prevention Week, and Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services is encouraging residents to make a fire escape plan. Fire Prevention Officer Troy Hicks explains why it is so important that everyone plans and practices ways to get out safely.
Not every hero wears a cape. Plan and practice your escape. It just goes to show the importance of people knowing their escape to get out of their home in the event of an emergency. We tell people to always have 2 ways out and to plan it with their family. A fire very rarely happens in the middle of the day when everyone's already outside. So it happens that when you're busy, you're doing something. So you need to be able to get out of your home. You need every member of your family to know where to go and what to do in the event of an emergency. Years ago, people had a lot more time to evacuate from their home. Now with the new materials that are used to make furniture and other items like that, the time is a lot smaller than what it used to be. So we need people to be able to get out of their homes quickly.
To recognize Fire Prevention Week, Lethbridge Fire and Emergency Services will also be awarding their annual Fire Chief for a Day to one lucky Lethbridge student. Many people took the plunge today for a great cause. Students, professors, and local dignitaries jumped into icy cold waters to raise money for the United Way's Community Fund.
It's a great opportunity for students, faculty members, as well as community leaders to come down, take the plunge into the icy water, and raise some money for a wonderful cause. So all the money stays right here in the community, and it's a great opportunity for students to take a break from midterms and finals and assignments that we know are going on right off the bat here, and kind of hang out outside with us and enjoy the weather and kind of enjoy their friends getting a little drenched. Students are doing things on campus that are not just studying or working. They're participating in community events as well as raising funds for charity. So it's a wonderful opportunity that the Management Students Society provides for students to get involved with charity in the community.
I'm here today because we are jumping in this pool to raise money for the United Way here in Lethbridge. It's a really important cause in our community, and I jumped all the way in because I don't like to do things halfway for Lethbridge. I want to do them all the way.
Novello says the goal for this year is to raise about $10,000. If you'd like to donate, please visit lethbridgeunitedway.ca. Bridge City News will be at the All Candidates Forum tonight beginning at 6 o'clock at the Yates Theatre. It's a chance for you to ask the various candidates questions that are most concerned for you. I will also be there along with other media types sitting on the media panel asking a few questions. Now there's another forum taking place in Coaldale tomorrow night beginning at 7 o'clock at the Coaldale Community Centre. The Lethbridge candidate for the People's Party of Canada, Grant Hepworth, will also be at the forum tonight, says his party does take climate change seriously. He says the PPC does have a plan for protecting the environment.
Our party will actually be focusing on things like land, air, water, preservation and such to make sure that corporations and major entities are not polluting and running away. Like that is a key issue right there. Like we have BC that's dumping millions of gallons of human waste in our ocean. We have Quebec that's doing the exact same thing to the St. Lawrence River. We've got mining companies in BC that are dumping their wastewater into our riverways and waterways. And everybody's turning a blind eye to that, yet saying CO2 is the worst thing in the world.
Catch the full interview with Grant Hepworth from the People's Party of Canada coming up in the second half of our show. Most of the federal party leaders are preparing for the English language debate tonight. Conservative leader Andrew Scheer also snuck in a little campaigning earlier today. He announced if he was elected Prime Minister, he would have free admission to all 9 national museums. Alberta Premier Jason Kenney has been in Ontario drumming up support for Scheer. He says Scheer is up to the task of becoming the next Prime Minister.
But I'll tell you this about Andrew. He will never embarrass us on the world stage or here at home like Justin Trudeau has.
Andrew Scheer's been a close personal friend of mine for 20 years, and I just want to go out there and vouch for him as a man of integrity. So I'm not going to get mixed up into politics in different provinces, provincially. I'm just here as the leader of the 3rd largest economy in Canada to say we desperately need a new federal government.
Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is appealing a ruling ordering Ottawa to pay $2 billion in compensation to First Nations children and their families who were separated by child welfare. Trudeau says he agrees with the ruling by the Canadian Human Rights Tribunal, but that his government needs more time to negotiate details with provinces and territories.
This is a principle that this government has exercised and fulfilled many times in the past, whether it was on the 60s scoop, whether it was on forced relocations or day schools or Inuit TB. We need to compensate those who've been harmed. But the question is how to do that. We need to have conversations with partners. We need conversations with communities, with leaders, to make sure we're getting that compensation right.
NDP leader Jagmeet Singh received some help and support from former NDP leader Ed Broadbent at a recent stop in Ottawa. The two hung out and toured a farmer's market together.
Good to see you. Hey. Any advice for him in the leaders' debate tomorrow?
To be himself and to repeat what he did in the French debate, which I thought was, I'm not exactly an expert in French, but I followed the debate the whole time, and he did superbly, and if he repeats that, he'll be a winner for sure.
You know, I always say this to Eddie, and Ed knows this. I say to him that I want to be like him when I grow up. He's been such a great mentor and a guy that's so supportive. I know that's like a lot of weight on the shoulders of someone to be able to help out the next generation, and he's doing a great job, and I'm really honored.
It has been a very tight race so far in this election campaign. BCN's Naveen Day has been following research polls and says that the rising popularity of NDP leader Jagmeet Singh and Green Party leader Elizabeth May be keeping the Trudeau Liberals from achieving a majority government.
The largest national public opinion poll in the 43rd general election shows the Conservatives at a slight advantage. The national poll, which was conducted by Campaign Research, says that 34% of Canadians that participated in the survey intend to vote Conservative, over 32% for the Liberals. The NDP and Green Party are trailing behind at 14 and 11% respectively. In the prairies, the Conservatives have a commanding lead over the Liberals, particularly in Saskatchewan and Alberta. In BC, it's a four-horse race with the Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, and Green Party all sitting between 19 and 30%. The Atlantic provinces and Quebec are where the red shines bright. The Maritimes show 42 over 25 for the Liberals against the Conservatives, 18 for the Green Party, and 10% for the NDP. In Quebec, the Liberals lead the way at 34%, Conservatives at 20%, NDP at 12%, and Green Party at 11%. The battleground is Ontario, where the Conservatives and Liberals are deadlocked at 36% each, while the NDP is at 16%. The only time this deadlock in Ontario was broken was in the immediate aftermath of the brownface, blackface incidents, which favored the Conservatives for 2 to 3 days. With 2 weeks left in the campaign, the numbers can easily shift once again. For Bridge City News, I'm Naveen Day.
Ontario Education Minister Stephen Lecce says the province reached a tentative agreement with the union representing about 55,000 education workers across Ontario. The deal averts a strike which would have closed schools across the province.
I'm pleased to confirm that agreement has been reached between the Crown, our government, CUPE, and the school board trustee associations that keep kids in class. This is most welcome news for families and students and workers alike, that schools will remain open across our province. But most importantly for me as minister and for families across our province, it is good news for our students who remain in class where they belong.
Meanwhile, contract talks to end the 21-day GM strike have taken a turn for the worse. The United Auto Workers Union says a snag has been hit over product commitments to U.S. factories.
This is the first one I've ever been out for this long.
To hear that we're going back and not forward, it's crushing.
I think there's a lot of frustration from the employees that the company is yet to bargain in good faith, I think, with the union.
This is hitting its 4th week. It's very heartbreaking because the domino effect. To be out here supporting 668 is just wonderful. You know, we're still here helping them with donations, so anything we can do, we're going to do it.
Pretty much the same as day one. We're pretty much in support of our leadership in the union, and we're out here, you know, letting them carry the weight.
2 adults and 3 children were found dead inside of a home in Massachusetts earlier today. Plymouth District Attorney Timothy Cruz said the victims appear to have died from gunshot wounds.
At approximately 7:30 a.m. today, Abington Police received a 911 call by a family member for a report of a medical emergency at 135 Center Ave in Abington. And upon arrival, the police discovered the body of a 40-year-old woman, apparently deceased. After further investigation, police found the bodies of 4 other people, all of whom were from the same family. 3 children, a twin 9-year-old boy and girl, an 11-year-old girl, and they also found the body of a 43-year-old man. As we speak right now, this remains an active and ongoing investigation. Preliminarily right now, all the deaths appear to be the result of gunshot wounds.
4 people were killed and 5 others were wounded following a weekend shooting at a bar in Kansas City. Police say the shooting stemmed from an earlier dispute.
When we arrived, obviously a lot of people were still inside the bar trying to exit, running out. Inside we located 4 Hispanic males. One of them is late 50s, one is mid-30s, and 2 are in their mid-20s. Inside the bar, deceased. outside the bar, we had 5 other victims that all sustained gunshot wounds. They were all taken to area hospitals, all in stable condition. I believe some of them have already been released. In the scene right now, or inside the club right now, just collecting evidence. We've done all our scans. We're trying to talk to as many witnesses as we can from the bar.
A young woman is preparing for the birth of a daughter that will have her father's name. Her father was an Army sergeant who was tragically killed last June in Afghanistan. This is their story.
A soldier killed in Afghanistan is honored in a small upstate New York village. And a 24-year-old widow accepts a folded flag for Army Sergeant James Johnston's sacrifice. A day later, Krista Johnston unwraps onesies at a baby shower. Presents for a daughter her husband will never meet.
It's really taken a lot to process, but it's a blessing. She's a blessing, and everybody here is been amazing.
Back-to-back ceremonies in rural Trumansburg marking death and life reflect the relentless toll of fighting in Afghanistan. It is America's longest war, with some 2,300 U.S. deaths in Afghanistan since 2001. James Johnston was an explosive ordnance disposal specialist. He was killed in June in a Taliban attack in Afghanistan's Uruzgan province. He was 7 years old when the war began 18 years ago, and had wanted to be in the military since he was a boy.
The last words to me were, he says, "Dad, if I have to die, I want to die in battle."
Johnston grew up in Texas, but went to high school here. He played football, became a junior firefighter, and met his future wife. He was funny and loyal, with a provocative streak.
Stay at home or go out. I'm staying at home.
The couple settled in Texas. In March, he found out he was going to be a father the day before he deployed to Afghanistan.
I print out this sign that says, boyfriend 2012, fiance 2014, husband 2014, and then father 2019. He just sat there with the photo frame in his hand, just staring. And he turns around, he has tears rolling down his face and asks if I'm serious. And it was the first time I'd seen him cry in the 7 years I've been together.
The girl will bear his name, Jamie. People wearing Hawaiian shirts packed a fundraiser at the American Legion Post a day before the baby shower. It was a tribute to Johnston, who loved Hawaiian shirts.
I needed to make sure that he was honored, and I needed to make sure that Krista and baby Jamie are honored.
The baby is due in November. Krista Johnston hopes their daughter has her husband's freckles and dark brown eyes. Family members say they will tell young Jamie who her father was. People here say they won't forget what he did. Michael Hill, Associated Press, Trumansburg, New York.
If you enjoy color, you will love this. The Albuquerque, New Mexico International Balloon Fiesta took flight over the weekend. The 9-day-long event drew pilots from 41 states in the U.S. and from all over the world. The spectacle has grown to over nearly 50 years and brings in millions of dollars to the local economy. Organizers say the fiesta is one of the most photographed events in the world. And you can see why, so much beauty and color. A beautiful day weather-wise today, but some flurries are on the way. Complete weather details are coming up. Another beautiful fall-like day today, but a low-pressure system returns, bringing rain mixed with flurries tonight and a low near +1. More snow tomorrow with a high expected near 0. Wednesday, the flurries should taper off, but the mercury will drop to -5. The sunshine returns on Thursday with a high near +5. Warming up considerably after that. Sunny and 10 degrees for Friday, a beautiful 17 expected on Saturday, a mixture of sun and cloud, and a high of only 11 on Sunday. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 17 degrees with an average low of 2. The highest temperature in the state was recorded in 1980 at 30 degrees, and the record low was -11 in 1970. Sunrise was at 7:40, sunset at 6:59. Looking at tomorrow's national temperatures now, a good chance of rain and 16 degrees in Victoria, a chance of showers and 14 for Vancouver. Expect snow and a high of only -3 for Calgary on Tuesday. Overcast and +1 for Edmonton. Rain and 11 for Regina. A chance of showers and 4 degrees for Saskatoon. A beautiful 20 degrees with sunshine is expected in Winnipeg tomorrow. Just a few clouds and 18 for Toronto. Mainly sunny and 17 for both Ottawa and Montreal. Over in the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will be partly cloudy and 17. Expect periods of rain and 17 as well in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Showers and 16 degrees for Charlottetown, PEI. And in St. John's, Newfoundland, expect light rain with a high near 16 degrees for tomorrow. General Electric is freezing the pension plans of about 20,000 workers. The company is also offering buyouts of 100,000 former employees as it attempts to slash debt. It says its actions would trim its pension deficit by about $5 to $8 billion. The industrial conglomerate has been selling off assets amid sagging profits. CEO Larry Culp says clearing debt has become GE's main priority. HSBC is slashing around 10,000 jobs around the world, and that has given many unions cause for concern. Officials say the cuts are an attempt to rein in costs by reducing its headcount among a staff of about 238,000. The bank has already eliminated about 4,700 jobs as it grapples with Brexit uncertainty and global trade squabbles. The consumer products giant Unilever says it aims to halve its use of non-recycled plastics by the year 2025. The company, whose brands include Dove and Lipton Tea, says the slashing of so-called virgin plastics will be requiring a fundamental rethink in its packaging priorities. Unilever previously said it would make all of its plastic packaging reusable or compostable by the year 2025. There's been a lot of talk of banning single-use plastics, especially by the Trudeau Liberals. Richard Friesen with Friesen Plastics says plastics can be useful in many ways, including using it as a fuel source.
Sweden has 34 electricity generating plants that are fueled by garbage, and a lot of that garbage would be plastic. And the incinerators heat up boilers, and the boilers turn the turbines, and they're producing a fair percentage of electricity just from burning garbage.
Catch the full interview with Mr. Friesen as we discuss the long-term impact of potentially banning plastics. That's coming up after business news. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was down 2760 on the day. The Dow Jones Industrial Average was also down 95 points. The Nasdaq was down 26 points to 7956, and the S&P 500 was down 13 points to 2938. Oil was down a cent to 52.80 per barrel. Natural gas was down a nickel to $2.30. Gold was down 48 cents to $14.93 per ounce, and silver was unchanged at $17.44. Wheat is at $210 per metric ton, barley's at $206, canola at $461, and corn is at $284 per metric ton. Live cattle was up 90 cents to $108.48, feeder cattle was down 28 cents to $142.38, and lean hogs were down $1.90 to $61.95. The Canadian dollar was down slightly on the day to 75.13 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Lethbridge City Council gave the go-ahead for a new housing strategy. Some of the 51 recommendations include reviewing land use bylaws to support development of affordable and supportive housing. Another action item outlines working with the federal and provincial governments to help create more affordable housing. We've been hearing from many of the local federal election candidates as we head into Election Day, October 21st. Coming up, a one-on-one chat with Grat Hempworth, who is the PPC candidate for Lethbridge. That interview is on deck. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News Community Calendar. Come for an amazing time to the McNally Community Association's Tex-Mex Fiesta fundraiser on Saturday, October 19th at the McNally Community Center. The evening begins with dinner at 7 p.m. with entertainment at 8 and a barn dance at 8:30. Music provided by the Great Canadian Barn Dance Band. Plus, a silent auction and raffle draw will be taking place at the event. Tickets are $50 per person and can be purchased at Western Stockman. For more information, visit mcnallycommunity.ca. Do you enjoy helping others in our community? Volunteers are needed in Lethbridge and Medicine Hat to support adults participating in local AHS recreation and leisure programs. AHS is looking for those who will provide guidance and encouragement to people taking part in aquatics, walking to wellness, and expressive arts. To learn more about this opportunity, call 403-388-6311 or apply online at albertahealthservices.ca. Men young and old alike are invited to come join the Lethbridge Christian Men's Choir. Practices are held every Thursday from 7:30 to 9 p.m. at Trinity Reformed Church. The choir practices are in preparation for Christmas and spring concerts, as well as occasional performances at the hospital and seniors' homes. For more information, call 403-328-7985. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
The federal election will be here before you know it. We've invited many of the Lethbridge candidates to join us in studio, including the People's Party of Canada candidate, Grant Hepworth. Grant, welcome to BCN.
I'm glad to be here. I appreciate it.
Grant, first of all, why would you want to become a politician? It's not the most popular occupation right now.
I admit that is definitely not something I thought I'd go down. It's a path that, I've always been passionate in politics. I've been following it for decades. I worked the great privilege to work for the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. They helped me get a good crash course on what actually happens behind the veil when it comes to government relations. And by dealing with that for several years and dealing with concerns of my clients and such, I realized that there was a lot of problems within the government and such, and it was just getting worse and worse and worse. I had an issue myself with, like when I got out of working for CFIB, I decided to start my own business, which, honestly, if you're already working as a lobbyist for businesses, you would think that, well, why would you get into business?
What kind of a business is it?
I run a tobacco harm reduction company. It's a vape shop. We're an education center. And I've been an advocate for the industry since 2008. And studying the science on the topic and what should you do and what you should not do and so on and so forth.
Vaping's in the news a lot right now. A lot of controversy around vaping.
Yeah, there's a ton.
A lot of parents are concerned about their kids. Vaping products.
Yeah. The key thing to take away from this whole thing is there's actually a lot of misinformation going on. When you look at the States, what's happened is like vaping's been around for 15 years. And we have this epidemic, this issue has come up in the last 3 months in one country, nowhere else on the planet. And it all has to do with what they're vaping. See, vaping is just a delivery method. That's all it is. Vaping can be used to bring in nicotine, to bring in THC, to bring in vitamins, caffeine, you name it. People do a lot of different things with this product. But what these kids are doing is they're getting their hands on illegal THC cartridges that have been cut with a product that is, it's called Honeycut, and it's got a vitamin E acetate, which is specific to the cosmetics industry. Now, our industry knows that you do not put oils into any liquid. There are no oils in vaping. It's vegetable glycerin, propylene glycol, flavoring, and nicotine. That's it, or no nicotine. And those constituents have been tested heavily for inhalation since the 40s. We use them in our medical industry and such. Like, this product was developed by a pharmacist. This was not developed by some mad scientist thinking, how can we mess with people? No, it was made to get people off of cigarettes, and that's why I even got into this industry. And being an advocate in this industry, oh my God, seeing what they do with regards to the industries that they don't prefer.
Okay, let's go from vaping to the drug crisis in our city. We have that problem on right now.
We definitely do have that problem
with the
right
opioid crisis.
Yep.
So how can the PPC party really help us, even locally here in Lethbridge?
Locally, it would be analyzing the subject, like what governments are actually looking at it. I've seen various conversations, like town halls and stuff like that, and it looks as if the people's concerns are pretty much brushed aside for in a sense, virtue signaling. It's like, well, we're helping people, so you shouldn't talk about it. It's like, that's not quite the situation we have here. We have a rampant crime going out of control. Like break-ins have skyrocketed to, what was it, 76% in a year's span. That's not a good structure. We've got people moving here from outside of the area to use our facility. Like they've had a safe injection site in Vancouver, East Vancouver for decades. They've never had these types of numbers.
Well, 20,000 visits a month right now.
Yeah, that's
Calgary's 65,
5,500, 6,500. Yeah, and we got
so,
20,000. That doesn't really say that, oh, it's just local users. And if it is local users, that's an even bigger problem.
So what's the solution then? Is it more intox, detox, counseling? We shut it down altogether?
We definitely need to have rehab. We definitely need to have more beds for rehab, more people for rehab. We need to have counselors come in. And when these people come in to use the product, it's like, okay, great, you can use it, but we're going to send you to rehab now. We're not going to arrest you. We're going to send you to rehab. That would be the best optimal step, as opposed to saying, okay, we're just going to arrest you, throw in the prison system, and you're not going to get your help. Because that's what they don't get the help when they're in the prison system. It's like, it's a nonviolent crime, so just send them directly to rehab and get them the help. People are saying that, you know, it's an infringement on their rights to do that. It's like, not quite, because we want them to be We want them to be productive members of society. We want them to contribute. We want them to be with their family and have a good time with life. We don't want them suffering. Like, by enabling them, they are suffering, and it's not a good structure to have.
Now, your party leader, Maxime Bernier, has gone on record saying he's not really happy about all the illegal border crossers from upstate New York into Quebec, you know, and he wants to do something about immigration and refugees. What are your thoughts? It's been very controversial.
Well, you know, that's the thing. When it comes to the whole controversial thing, it's who's creating the controversy, who's saying that it is controversial. If you talk to immigrants, they don't think it's an issue. They actually prefer the lessening of more immigrants coming to the country. When it comes to the Roxham Road situation, these are people that are flying in from other countries, going to New York, and then crossing the border. Why can't they make it go to an actual border crossing, like a legitimate one? Why do they choose that location? Because they can skip the queue. They're knowingly breaking the law. And we're accepting them with open arms. So, like, it's almost premeditated that they're doing it. And we have tons of official border crossings. Choose one, go through it, apply properly. My friend's wife is an immigrant, and she's been in Canada for, I'd say, close to a decade now. And she's been teaching Japanese and stuff like that. Really, really smart woman and such. But when she finally chose to become a permanent resident, her position was gone. She had to go through a ton of hoops, and it's been, well, a very slow and arduous process for them to actually go that path. Whereas these people, it's just jump ahead of the queue and we're in. We've got 11-year wait times now because of this.
My parents were immigrants as well, coming from Europe. I'm a first-generation Canadian. I remember the process they had to go through. Yeah. My parents also helped establish a business and helped, hire a lot of people with small businesses, and helped stimulate the economy. Let's talk about our economy here in southwestern Alberta. Grant, I mean, it's very agricultural based. How can the PPC party help farmers?
Well, when it comes to farmers, trade is a key issue there. Opening up relations with other countries that need our product.
Outside of China, where all the embargoes
outside of China, yeah. We put too many eggs in one basket in that respect. And the whole China situation, it shows, there's been some, I don't know if you'd call it a conspiracy, but it looks like we were played. There's China and the United States are having a battle, having a trade war. And then out of nowhere, we're told to arrest somebody that's basically part of Chinese royalty. So we arrested her. We could have easily just, said that we missed her and had her go on her merry way, because right after that happened, all hell broke loose. We actually could have benefited from the trade war that's going on in the United States with China, because we already had decent relations with China. We could have benefited greatly from that. Instead, we're now being punished, and by both sides. So we've been played. I really honestly, I do believe, even though it does sound conspiracy-ish, Trump is not an idiot.
So bottom line, open it up to other markets. What about our energy sector and the Trans Mountain Pipeline expansion? We need to get that pipeline built here in Alberta.
No, when it comes to the energy sector, the PPC is actually first and foremost about putting through the pipelines. We want to repeal we would immediately repeal both Bill C-48 and Bill C-69, and we would use constitutional powers to put the pipelines through. It's in the Constitution, it's 92 subsection 10. It's existed we've used it over 300 times in this country to build our railways, our highways, lots of infrastructure, dams, things that are of national interest. This is of national interest to get our pipelines to Tidewater, or our product to Tidewater. And for provinces like BC and Quebec to oppose it, it really isn't their say. It's like, this is truly a federal issue, so it should be federal jurisdiction, and we would use those powers to put it through. Other parties suggest, quite a few parties suggest just killing it completely, saying, oh yeah, we're done with oil. It's like, no, we're not. Or we're running out. And it's like, no, we're not.
So climate change is a big hot button issue as well this election. A lot of people are talking climate change. What's the PPC plan in tackling climate change?
Well, that's another piece of contention. When it comes to climate change, there's a lot of people that say it is it's a crisis. It's not a crisis. We don't view it as a crisis at all. There's a lot of opposing views on the topic on both sides of the spectrum. When you look at over the past century, there's been over 130 predictions of the end of the world due to climate change. Not a single one of those instances have come to pass. Zero. Like if we had one or two, we would actually have something to go with, but they've been using the Peter Cry-Wolf scenario for over a century, and it still has yet to happen. Like we're supposed to be underwater by now. Vancouver and Toronto shouldn't exist as we currently have this conversation. If all these claims were to come true, they haven't. Okay, why are the people that go around screaming about this topic? They're flying all over the world. They're going to Earth summits in private yachts, and it's like, really? You guys are supposed to be the stewards of this whole movement, and yet you are the biggest polluters on the planet. Our party will actually be focusing on things like land, air, water, preservation and such, to make sure that corporations and major entities are not polluting and running away. Like that is a key issue right there. Like we have BC that's dumping millions of gallons of human waste in our ocean. We have Quebec that's doing the exact same thing to the St. Lawrence River. We've got mining companies in BC that are dumping their wastewater into our riverways and waterways. And everybody's turning a blind eye to that, yet saying CO2 is the worst thing in the world.
The People's Party of Canada also has a plan to balance the budget within 2 years. That's pretty ambitious. How's that going to work?
It's actually not that hard. If you look at a lot of the waste that goes on within the government, it's astounding. Like, there was a report that just came out yesterday and was talking about how much money is given to corporations. Okay, so there was 2014 to 2015, the government, now it's not just the federal government, but the government as a whole put $29 billion towards businesses, okay? And 14.5 of that was the federal government subsidizing businesses. We got nothing in return from that. We had a lot of businesses that took the money and within a year they vanished off the map. We had very little accountability. The programs that are put in place for this are just, they're appalling. Nobody actually follows up to say, okay, you have a valid business plan, let's move forward with this. A lot of them is just an idea. Oh yeah, great idea, all right, here's a couple $100 million. Yeah, it doesn't pan out, and it ends up hurting us in the long run because, you know, the debt of today is the tax of tomorrow, and that's not something we want to continue to work with. So we would end up cutting, on our docket is to remove corporate welfare completely. So that can range between $5 to $10 billion a year, sometimes $15 billion depending on the time. We also have issues like foreign spending. That is fairly large. Like right now we're committed to, the Liberal government is actually committed to Canada to paying $7.1 billion until 2030 to help abortion in Africa. Okay, so why should that be our expense? That should maybe be their expense, or they can actually discuss that with their own government and see if that's something they want to do as opposed to being forced by a Western nation.
Let's talk about education now here quickly. Okay. Some of the other candidates that came by our studio said that they want to offer free post-secondary.
Yeah.
Nothing in life is free.
No, it isn't. That's where it comes down to personal responsibility. That's one of the main pillars of our party. And you know, I had the opportunity when I graduated from high school, I had top honors. I had the opportunity to go to university, but I just couldn't afford it. I wanted to go into marine biology or into acupuncture, and it was not realistic. It was going to cost me $40,000 a year, and it was minimum 4-year courses. So
what's the PPC plan?
PPC plan is basically we will be continuing to fund education through the current structure. Like we're not really making many changes in that respect. The main objective is to reduce the amount of money that's going out on the federal government as a whole, and once we have a surplus, then we can start working with addressing these types of issues. For the most part, when you look at some of the disparities when it comes to education, you have to look at the bureaucrats that work within. A lot of these administrators are making a lot of money and then crying wolf that they can't afford to pay for various things within their structures. Like out in Ontario, there was a case with the Ontario School Board crying about a lack of funds. And then within a month saying that they're making an acquisition of 28,000 cell phones for their entire faculty. It's like, wait a minute. So you're spending like $40 million on these cell phones, and yet you don't have any funds for this program over here. You guys you're not spending money properly at all. So that needs to be addressed right there. The PPC, like I said, education is a provincial issue, but we would try and direct more funding to that through proper organizations and tell them where the money needs to go.
People's Party of candidate for Lethbridge, Grant Hepworth, thanks a lot for joining me in studio today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
There have been all kinds of demands from environmentalists and political leaders to ban single-use plastics in Canada. The reasoning is that this is necessary to save the planet. But will a plastic ban actually make things better or worse? We thought it might be good to hear from the other side of the issue. Joining me now is Richard Friesen, who's a business owner involved in producing plastics for over 20 years, and he lives right here in Lethbridge. Welcome to Bridge City News, Richard.
Thank you.
Okay, a lot of grocery stores are talking, bottom line, we're getting rid of the plastic bags, bringing in paper bags. Is that a good idea?
No, quite frankly, it's a rather bad idea. It's totally the wrong approach. Plastic was invented, thank goodness, to take away a lot of the problems that there were with paper bags. First of all, the cost. Plastic is substantially cheaper. A plastic bag is substantially cheaper to produce, and believe it or not, the environmental impact is a lot less with plastic than it is with paper. Most people think of paper, so it's a paper bag, but look at where it came from. It came from a forest somewhere, and there was a big piece of diesel machinery that had to take the tree down, and then it's transported. Again, there's a fair bit of transportation, and then off to a pulp mill. And pulp mills are always located close to a water source. So there's a lot of water used in the production of paper. Every time when you look at a paper mill, you'll see the big smokestacks, and there's a lot of smoke going up in those stacks. And
aren't you saving trees at the same time too if you go plastic instead of paper?
We're saving trees. Trees suck up CO2 and produce oxygen, and so the cost is significantly more when you take the entire footprint into consideration. To make plastic, you open a tap and you siphon off a byproduct of natural gas. Most of the bags, or virtually all the bags in the food industry, are made from either polyethylene or polypropylene, and both are byproducts of natural gas.
How about transporting as well? Is paper more expensive than plastic?
Transportation, right, it's a good point. One truckload of plastic bags, or I should say a truckload of plastic bags can carry the same amount as 7 truckloads of paper bags. So that's, there again, the transportation costs are 7 times more when it comes to paper versus plastic.
But how about breaking down in a landfill? That's where a lot of people have concerns. It's like, it's not biodegradable where the paper is. I think that's where a lot of environmentalists have their concerns.
A lot of landfills are not healthy landfills. They don't necessarily, in some landfills nothing breaks down. You can dig into a landfill that's not working properly, and you'll read newsprint from the 60s. And actually, in a landfill, plastic is probably one of the safest items in the landfill. When the plastic, if it doesn't degrade, well, no harm done, because there are no toxins in plastic bags used in the food industry. And that is why we can put food into these bags. We can put bread into a bread bag, and there's nothing will leach into the bread.
But how about actually burning the plastics? Do we release toxins into the atmosphere that way?
If plastic is burned properly, incinerated properly at a high enough temperature, and the smokestacks are properly built, designed, there's very, very little gases going into the atmosphere. Whereas in a landfill, we got to remember, also produces greenhouse gases. And so if that's true, incineration does produce some greenhouse gases, but the fuel that is in plastics makes an excellent source of energy for a generating plant.
You know what's interesting too is how some of the fast food restaurants you go to now, they have paper straws instead of plastic straws. You know, we got to get rid of all those plastic straws. And I've, used the paper straws, and it's already disintegrating. I know it's from the acid, whatever, within the pop itself or the soda in my mouth, and I can taste the paper. Where you don't have that, that's not necessarily the case with plastic. So is it worth it? Maybe we should continue with paper straws for the environment, but
No,
like it's already breaking down in my mouth as I'm drinking my drink.
Right, that's a problem. I've noticed that too. What of course it's a target because somebody shows a picture of a plastic drinking straw sticking in, coming out of the nostril of a sea turtle, and that is unfortunate. But in Canada, we don't dump our plastic into the ocean. There are countries, particularly in Asia, where plastic does get dumped in the waters and it ends up in the oceans. But in Canada, it does not have that problem, and so this is a total overreaction.
Richard, let's go back to plastic bags for just a moment here. And what's interesting, a lot of people believe that plastic bags are made from oil, like the oil energy sector. But that's not really the case, is it?
Not in Alberta. In Alberta, I believe virtually all of the plastic, especially polyethylene and polypropylene, are manufactured from ethylene, a byproduct of natural gas. We're not going to be replacing natural gas for our heating, our houses, and so natural gas will probably be used for a long time. And if we don't use the byproduct to make plastic, we'll probably just burn it off. And that happens to unwanted gases are usually just burned off. And we haven't really accomplished anything.
Some environmentalists and politicians want to see us, ban plastics altogether, like get rid of plastics. But I'm thinking to myself, we have plastics in our electronics, toys, car parts, the wheels on this desk here, where we're doing the interview.
Exactly.
It's just about in everything. So what's the alternative?
That's, I guess, turning the clock back to 1950. That would be one alternative. We had very little plastic back then. Because I don't really think there is there aren't economical alternatives to much of what we're using. Car parts, for example, a lot of them were made out of steel in the early days of the automobile, and that, of course, with them going to plastic, it has lightened the cars substantially. The cars would be twice the weight they are now if it wasn't for the plastic.
Now, I've heard there are also biodegradable plastic bags. Would they be something maybe environmentalists could get behind?
If it has the word plastic in it, it's tough to get an environmentalist behind it. But there are, in certain applications, biodegradable products can be used. One problem with biodegradable bags would be a time limit. If they start degrading too soon, they're generally not used in the food for food storage. But for other uses, garbage bags, our company produces biodegradable plastic.
Well, that's great. Tell me about that whole process, from the concept all the way to completion when it hits the store shelves.
Our plant produces plastic from plastic resin, and again, the resin is for a plastic bag, it would be the same kind of resin that you would use to make Tupperware. Everybody's quite comfortable with using Tupperware to store food, and that is what plastic bags are made of, polyethylene. Okay. At least our bags. And if they're for a bakery or a produce shipper, they will get printed. And so we print the plastic, and then the plastic rolls of printed plastic rolls get put through a bagging machine, and bags are made according to whatever the customer specifications. And then after they're packaged, they usually go to a central distribution place, probably in Calgary, and then shipped throughout Western Canada.
Who are some of your biggest clients? Do you ship like across Canada and the United States, maybe to Asia?
Most of our no, we wouldn't be shipping anything out of or nothing to Asia, but our biggest customer base is Western Canada.
Have the restaurant owners told you, said, listen, we're going away from plastics, we're going to be going with someone else?
No, we haven't had information like that. We haven't had requests like that, no.
So if a plastic ban was implemented, especially with single-use plastics, the water bottles, the knives and forks, what's the financial cost to the consumer?
There definitely, it'll increase the cost will be passed on to the consumer, and I don't know what it would be in terms of dollars, but at a time when we want to look for more efficient ways of doing everything else, why would we pick on something as useful as plastic storage and say, hey, we're going to ban it and go to something more expensive? It just doesn't make sense. We should continually look for efficiencies, and by turning the clock back, going to paper, that is not in the best interest of the consumer at all.
And aren't the plastic bags stronger too than a lot of the paper bags for holding groceries? Or?
For weight, yes, for sure. Paper. The problem with reusing a paper bag, for example, is the chances are the second time you'll use it, it'll tear. And plastic definitely has per weight, it is substantially stronger.
How about recycling initiatives? I know some cities, they don't like to recycle the plastic bags. That's why they end up in the landfill. Where with paper bags, you know, it's a lot easier to recycle because you're using paper. So how do you respond to that?
Paper, for example, not all paper can be recycled. Take paper cups, they can't be recycled. Either it's because of the glue, if they're glued together, and most paper cups would be, you can't recycle them. Or they might have a plastic or a wax liner, and then of course you can't recycle them either. So most paper cups do not get recycled. Paper bags, if they're nice and clean, they'll be recycled. But a pizza box, no, you can't recycle it. Mm-hmm. So not everything that comes in paper can be recycled.
What's interesting too is the juice boxes. You know, they say let's get juice boxes
yes.
because they're made out of paper. Well, they're covered in plastic too.
They are, and I'm not sure what they're being turned into because they have, like you say, a lot of plastic and glue. But the reason they're, of course, why we keep them is because there's a deposit built into the price. So it's we're encouraged, of course, to turn them in.
So what's the biggest threat to your industry right now, Richard? What do you think? Is it government regulation? Are environmentalists putting some pressure on you, a little heat on you? Like, what are you feeling right now?
The biggest pressure in regards to recycling, I don't know if it would be really consumer demand. I would guess it would be interest groups, special interest groups demanding that that special interest groups would like us to stop making plastic altogether, obviously. But that's a very narrow-minded viewpoint, and I don't think it's widely held. I think most consumers are actually quite happy with the way things are.
Has your business seen maybe a bit of a decline or a little dip over the last few years, as more people are thinking more about the environment, perhaps?
We haven't noticed a dip in our sales, but then again, our major product isn't one-time use plastic either. Most of our plastic that we produce would be for we do a lot of industrial plastic and other plastic.
So bigger businesses and corporations come to you and said, we're thinking of changing our philosophy, our ideology, maybe away from plastics or a different alternative because they want to be more environmentally conscious?
In our industry, we haven't been approached by any larger company to try and convince us to do it. Yeah. We have a market and we're there to help fill the market, and I just don't see this market as going away.
Now there's some new studies that say plastic bags are used as fuel, especially in some of the Scandinavian countries like Sweden. Can you talk a bit about that?
That's right. Sweden has 34 electricity generating plants that are fueled by garbage, and a lot of that garbage would be plastic. And the incinerators heat up boilers, and the boilers turn the turbines, and they're producing a fair percentage of electricity just from burning garbage. And of course, the smoke is scrubbed. The smokestacks are scrubbed. There's still some greenhouse gases going up the smokestacks, but probably a lot less than are coming out of the landfills where this garbage was destined to go. And another country that is using incineration and getting energy out of it is Japan.
Richard Friesen, owner of Friesen Plastics, thanks a lot for joining me today on Bridge City News.
Thank you.